Temu. Most apps are at least subtle about what they collect. Temu, according to a 2023 report by cybersecurity firm Grizzly Research, may not bother. That year, it became the most downloaded app in America, which makes sense. Everything costs almost nothing, shipping is free, and somewhere around the third dollar item, your brain just stops asking questions. The Grizzly Research report called it the most dangerous app in wide circulation. The reason was specific. According to their findings, the app uses something called dynamic code loading, a technique that lets it change what it actually does on a device after Google has already reviewed and approved it. Google checks one version, puts the badge on it, and a different version quietly shows up on the phone. Nobody reviewed that one. Once that version lands on the device, it reportedly has reach into the microphone, the camera, GPS tracking, all of it in real time. When Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin sued in June 2024, the complaint called Temu dangerous malware. It alleged the app was built to get unrestricted access to a phone, and to do it without the user ever noticing. Your contacts aren't just names. That's your doctor, your kid's school, your family's phone numbers, people who never downloaded a thing. Your GPS is where you sleep, where you work, what time you leave the house every single day. By 2025, Nebraska and Kentucky had filed their own suits. The FTC added a $2 million fine for separate violations. Temu calls all of it meritless. Keep one thing in mind. Temu's parent company is called PDD Holdings. By the last entry, that name is going to land differently. Flo Period Tracker. Unlike a social app or a shopping platform, this one held the kind of data most people don't share with anyone, except maybe their doctor. 100 million downloads, the most downloaded health app in America. Women logged their cycles, pregnancies, symptoms, and mental health, trusting a privacy policy that said all of it stayed private. According to the FTC's complaint, finalized in a settlement in June 2021, it didn't. While the app told users their data was protected, Flo was quietly sending period cycles, pregnancy information, and health data directly to Facebook and Google Analytics. Once that data left the app, it went to advertising platforms, and the FTC had to order third parties who received it to delete it. A class action followed. By 2025, Google settled for $48 million, and Flo settled for $8 million, $56 million combined, with no admission of wrongdoing from either company. And here's where it gets worse. When Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, the Electronic Effrontery Foundation raised a concern that hadn't been widely discussed. In states where abortion is now criminalized, law enforcement can potentially subpoena health app data. A missed period followed by cycles returning to normal can suggest a pregnancy that ended. According to the EFF, that specific data trail could theoretically be used as evidence in a criminal prosecution. Flo says it stopped all data sharing after the 2021 settlement. For years before that, the app millions of women trusted with exactly that information was quietly passing it to Facebook. Most of them didn't find out until the FTC required Flo to tell them. Life 360. Unlike most privacy stories, this one was sold as its opposite. It was built on one promise: you always know where your family is. Real-time location, all day, down to the street. 83 million users. In December 2021, the Markup published an investigation backed by 4 former Life 360 employees and 2 former data broker employees. Life 360 was selling precise real-time location data, including children's location data, to roughly a dozen data brokers. Those brokers then sold it to, in the words of one former employee, virtually anyone who wanted to buy it, which, somehow, is legal. Once that data reached a broker's hands, buyers could do things the app's users never anticipated. According to a federal class action complaint, it could identify a phone that visited a reproductive health clinic and trace it back to a home address. It could show which nights someone wasn't home, which locations they visited regularly. The complaint alleged this put people visiting domestic violence shelters, addiction recovery centers, and LGBTQ+ centers at risk of discrimination, violence, and serious harm. The Texas Attorney General sued Allstate and its subsidiary Arity in 2024, alleging they pulled driving data from Life 360 and used it to quietly raise users' insurance premiums without those users ever knowing. In January 2025, the FTC ordered Life 360 to stop selling sensitive location data entirely. Life 360's own CEO had already acknowledged publicly that selling location data was how the free version was funded, 95% of users were still sharing. 5% had opted out. The family safety app was selling the family's location. CamScanner. What makes this one different from most malware stories isn't the Trojan that eventually showed up. It's what the app was already holding before any of that happened. 100 million downloads. Professors recommended it. Google featured it. People scanned passports through it. Social security cards, lease agreements, tax returns. Documents that in the wrong hands are enough to rebuild someone's identity from scratch. In August 2019, Kaspersky published research finding a Trojan inside a recent update identified as Trojan Dropper Android OS.necro.in. The developers had added a third-party advertising library to an update without checking what was inside it. That library had a dropper, code designed to pull a hidden payload from within the app after it was already installed. Once that dropper activated, it ran invisible ad fraud quietly in the background and signed users up for paid subscriptions with no notification. Charges appeared on bank statements. No email, no alert, no explanation. While that was running, the app had photos of passports and social security numbers just sitting in it. Whether any of that was accessed has never been confirmed. But active malware was living inside an app holding all of it, and nobody found it through any kind of technical review. Kaspersky found it because users had been leaving one-star reviews about mystery charges for months. The evidence was in the public App Store comments, the whole time. The developers removed the code after Kaspersky published. No statement, no apology. Free VPN apps. Unlike most malware that has to find its way onto a device, the software behind one of the largest botnets ever built was downloaded on purpose by people who were trying to be responsible about their privacy. In May 2024, the FBI and Department of Justice shut down something called the 911S5 botnet, described by law enforcement as possibly the largest botnet ever created. 19 million compromised devices across 190 countries, rented to criminals for cyber attacks and wire fraud and bomb threats, and over 17,000 fraudulent COVID relief applications that took tens of millions of dollars from American taxpayers. And I mean that literally. The apps that built it were free VPNs, specifically Mask VPN, Do VPN, Paladin VPN, Proxygate, Shield VPN, and Shine VPN. Once installed, those apps quietly converted people's phones into proxy servers, routing criminal traffic while they slept, while they worked, while they thought they were doing the responsible thing. When a device is part of a botnet, its IP address gets attached to every crime that moves through it. Bomb threats placed from that number. Fraud filed from that address. Investigators follow the trail, and it leads to the device owner first. Kaspersky reported that encounters with malicious VPN apps jumped 2.5 times in Q3 of 2024 alone. The more people search for free privacy tools, the more of these get built to catch them. Pinduoduo. Most of what's on this list can be explained by negligence, a bad library, a careless update, something nobody checked. This one can't. PDD Holdings, Temu's parent company, also runs Pinduoduo, the second largest e-commerce platform in China. 750 million monthly users, publicly traded on the Nasdaq, worth over $100 billion. In March 2023, cybersecurity firms Lookout and Kaspersky, along with independent researchers, published findings that went further than anything else on this list. The app had been actively exploiting a zero-day vulnerability in Android, a flaw Google didn't know existed yet, with no patch and no fix in place. According to those findings, the app used it to reach system-level access, the kind Android is built specifically to block. Once inside, it could reportedly read private messages, watch activity in other apps, access stored files, install software without any prompt, and bury itself deep enough that a factory reset might not pull it out. CNN investigated and published in April 2023. Multiple independent security firms confirmed the findings. Google pulled Pinduoduo from the Play Store. The team behind the feature was reportedly disbanded. According to everything published, this wasn't a library that slipped through. It wasn't a contractor who went off script. The code was written by Pinduoduo's own engineers, deliberately. A $100 billion company, publicly traded on an American stock exchange, quietly built a surveillance tool into its own app and ran it against hundreds of millions of its own users. Their other app, Temu, is still on the Play Store, still requesting camera access, still requesting microphone access, still requesting contacts and GPS. Multiple state attorneys general are suing. The company denies everything. This is working exactly as designed.